Welcome back to the R-Rated Podcast. The R-Rated Podcast. This week's guest is...
Welcome back to the R-Rated Podcast. Today's guest is Michael Hissrich, and he is a famous TV and film producer. Thank you so much for coming on, and welcome.
Thank you.
I wanted to say that this is the 100th episode, so it's even more special. To start out, I actually wanted to jump back in time and ask you where you were born and raised.
I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania,
Okay.
Which is a fantastic place to be born and raised.
Okay.
And honestly, was a great place to kind of learn a little bit about the film world, because when I was young, it was probably one of the best non-union film cities.
Oh,
so,
really?
Yeah, because you could come in and there was a good crew that was non-union, and way back then you could, make a feature film for like $10 million. And, then that's why a lot of big movies were made back then that kind of found their way, so.
Wow. And so what piqued that first interest for you? Like, did you know you wanted to be a producer at a young age, or was it something else in film?
No, actually, film came late. I grew up, my parents had a small electrical supply company.
Oh, okay.
Which, sold light bulbs and wire and stuff like that. So I always say I started working there when I was 4 years old, because we moved stores and I could carry boxes of light bulbs. So I worked for my dad from 4 to 24. So I already retired from one one job.
Yeah.
But then when I got into, honestly, junior high school, I joined the stage crew like a little dork, and because I knew lighting.
Right.
So,
Stage lighting.
Right. I knew stage lighting.
And
So I did
everything.
that, and then went to a great high school that had a great theater department and did more lighting, and applied to Carnegie Mellon which is still one of the best theater schools on the planet.
Wow.
And
How long's the program there?
4 years undergrad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. 4 years.
And got in from the good graces of, I guess, talent, because it certainly wasn't my grades. And I went to school to become a Broadway lighting designer.
Wow.
That's what I was going to do.
And what did your parents say at this point? Like, were they supportive, or were they like,
Unbelievably supportive.
I love that.
Like, I looking back, it's insane. Neither of my parents went to college. They worked from the day they got out of high school. They worked and did very well. I mean, just the hardest working people ever. But the idea that they were going to spend that kind of money, because Carnegie Mellon's not a state school.
It's not cheap.
The idea that they were going to spend that kind of money to send me to school to learn theater.
Yes, that's
my brother went to school for business, and but it's still insane to me that they bought into that. And God bless they did. And school was great. I kind of morphed into more of a technical director. I always say that they figured out early that I could use power tools without cutting my hand off. So I got to build a lot of scenery and things like that. So the interesting thing about going to school in Pittsburgh, especially at Carnegie Mellon, is two things kind of rotated around Carnegie Mellon's theater department that weren't theater based. Number one is it's literally Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. WQED is adjacent to the Carnegie Mellon campus. So in the theater department, you get to kind of go in and out and be a little part of the land of make-believe.
That's amazing.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is some of the faculty in the summers do George Romero zombie movies.
Casual.
So
that is awesome.
So once they figured out you can use power tools without cutting your hand off, you get in the summer you can get a job working on
zombie movies.
whatever movie George Romero was doing at the time, and that's really where I got the theater bug, or the film bug.
The film bug.
I will never forget being on set late at night. I was the on-set carpenter, and there was a shot that had a mirror in it that had to be adjusted. So in order to see how it needed to be adjusted, George Romero sat me on the dolly and put my eye to the lens, and then he turned the wheels to show me the shot.
Wow.
And I was like,
you're like, I'm in love. This is it.
That's pretty cool, right? I mean, that was pretty great. So, finished school, moved to New York. I'm gonna be I'm gonna work on Broadway, which I did.
Yeah.
But always had that film thing.
Okay.
So, by chance, when I was at school at Carnegie Mellon, a grad named John Wells, who's a few years older than me, came back to school from LA to produce a show.
Okay.
And I kind of worked with him as kind of an assistant while he was doing that. And we kind of made a connection. And he said, if you ever come to LA, come see me. A few years later, I was living in New York. I came out for a friend's wedding. And I have stayed for 30 years.
And you never went back?
I never went back.
Wow, that's
mostly
a great story.
because I went to see John, who was working on a show called China Beach.
Okay.
And they said, hey, we're hiring here. So I took a 70% pay cut. And I figured I could either go back to New York and go to NYU for grad film.
Yeah.
Or I could stay here and do it. And that's what I did. And I was a production assistant on the last year of China Beach, which was long before you were born. But it was a fantastic experience. And I still work with some of those people today, 30 plus years later.
That's amazing to hear. So what was the first thing you produced?
Well, producing is such a weird term. Like, what does that mean? I was technically my first producer title was on ER. I was an associate producer on that, and because I worked in post-production, which is, so I did all the picture end of post-production at that time, color correction, editing, on any online stuff. Another fantastic producer named Wendy Spence did the audio, did the sound end of it. And we met at the last possible moment. We put the picture and sound together and then fired it off to NBC to put it on the air every Thursday night. Wow. But it was such a massive show and such a massive hit. It allowed us to kind of, become at that exact time on the Warner Brothers lot was ER and Friends. Were made. Right. They were
two
made
iconic
like
shows.
I don't know,
but very different from each other.
like 150 yards from each other.
Wow.
And they were both on Thursday night, and it was kind of a remarkable time to see.
Wow.
At its high, at its highlight, 50 million people were watching ER at one time.
Wow.
And that was 20% of the population of the country.
Yeah, that's
pretty amazing.
Pretty impressive.
So we'll never see those numbers again.
No,
ever on any show whatsoever. So
what did that feel like to know that many people were tuning in to something that you were creating?
We had really no idea until we had our Christmas party. Because you start shooting in July.
Right.
It goes on the air in September. And then you have to take a little break at Christmas, and they show, they throw a big Christmas party for the cast and crew, which is super cool.
Yeah.
Little did we know, we went to a place that was down by the Wiltern Theater.
Okay.
Great spot, great restaurant that we had bought out. Whole wall of glass windows.
People waiting for you
out to the street. The hell what do we know? Well, when we had that party, there were 20 news cameras outside looking in. At our Christmas party, and it was just, this is getting.
You're like, this is
getting weird now. And then there was the famous magazine cover of the cast wheeling somebody down the hall, saying, a medical plan, because even then it was all about medical insurance and stuff, and it's like a medical plan that finally works or something like that. It's just, it's another level of being out there.
Wow. So, but before ER, you were working on West Wing, right?
No, West Wing was after.
It was after. Oh,
West Wing was after, yeah.
Okay, so then let me pick your brain a little bit more about ER.
4 years of ER.
4 years, wow.
And then left and did another show that was short-lived, and then we started West Wing and Third Watch at the same time.
Okay, so what was it like working with John Wells? And what is your relationship like now? Seems like you guys had a long relation. Like you guys have known each other for a long time.
We have known each other for decades and decades.
Yeah.
Look, there's a reason why John's John. He is one of the smartest, nicest. He's just everything you want a boss and a mentor and a friend to be. We get along really well because I've learned the vast majority that I know from him, so I can kind of think the way he thinks.
Okay.
And I think that's why we've stuck together so long, is that I can hopefully, I always joke and say that, I kind of stand like one step back, 2 steps back and 1 step over, so that at the appropriate time I can lean in and tell him what I think, and then he can decide whether to take that or not.
Right.
And he has given me a lot of latitude and a lot of authority to act on his behalf, and it's been great. And I know that I have his back, and he's got mine if it comes down to it. And
so it's about trust too, right? Like,
he is he's just a really talented writer and a really talented director, but he's probably the best television producer.
Wow.
In the world. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, his track record is
I
extraordinary.
mean, the numbers, the numbers
success,
don't lie.
The success is amazing. So, it's a great world to be in. I always say that, sure, I've been around 30 years, but there's some other people who've been around almost as long as I have. The good people tend to stay.
Yeah.
And what happens is you get out of cycle or something. John doesn't have something going on, so you go work somewhere else,
right? Which
is cool. You go work at NBC, you do something at Fox, And man, as soon as you get there, you can't wait to come back.
Wow,
to John Wells Productions,
because
they're, we're not shy about saying we have a no asshole policy. We just
what's this no asshole policy? I'd love to hear.
We just
don't tolerate it.
Don't do it. No.
Cool.
We treat everybody with respect. We say please and thank you.
Yes.
Everybody is valuable, from number one on the call sheet to the first the PA the first day in the door. You treat those people well, because we take training the next generation very seriously.
I love that you say that, because I feel like there's this like stereotype that comes with like newer people joining the industry of like, the older generation doesn't want us to like have it like create our own path or have it like easy, or like they want us to like suffer.
When my first job was on China Beach, you know why they hired me?
Why?
To drive scripts around.
Yep. Hey.
You know why? There was no internet.
Right.
There was no literally somebody did pages for a script. I got up in the middle of the night and went to data processing in the back of the Warner Brothers lot, waited for them to hand me a stack of scripts, and I drove them to all the cast houses from La Cañada to Malibu, because when they woke up in the morning, they needed to have those.
Yeah.
And they had spent too much money the year before on couriers. So they hired me $350 a week.
Wow.
I made more money in mileage than I did in my salary.
But you're like, it's one step closer, or you're...
I was,
Sometimes you have to make sacrifices, right?
And, again, but going back to, God bless my parents, they, they set me up for success. And it's the thing that I will do for my children. And I got out of college debt-free.
Wow.
And they bought me a car.
Wow. Shout out your parents.
Right there.
Shout out your parents.
Right there, and I didn't realize it until I came out here and I had roommates and stuff like that were scrimping. I mean, they were making $350, $450 a week, paying rent, paying for
trying
a car,
to survive.
And the fact that I didn't have these bills coming in made all the difference in the world.
Right.
It allowed me to continue taking lower paying jobs, but with the right people and stuff for a while. Because I didn't have to jump because somebody was going to pay me $50 a week more.
That's fair. I love that. Thanks for sharing that. What were some maybe struggles that you faced when producing ER? Like, were there any days that you're like, oh my god?
Yeah, I mean, that show was epically large. I mean, no show had ever done that much dialogue in an episode. We were doing shows were doing like 45-page scripts. We were doing 80-page scripts. It was so fast. And back then you would do 22 episodes.
I know.
24, I think maybe the first season.
Yeah.
We might have done 24. And you had to get them on every week. So post-production was always, and still is, where the crunch happens. Production. The oddity about that show which then has honestly been almost every show I've done is
Yeah.
It's not set. We shoot it in LA, but it's not set here.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to go to, in that case, Chicago to
Right.
shoot exteriors. So
Mm-hmm.
you can't do that every week.
No.
So you shoot a show, you edit a show, and then it sits.
Right.
Waiting for, a month from now when we go and shoot scenes in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Then you bring them back, you got to slap those in, hope it fits, makes you right.
Right.
And then we would literally deliver the tape to NBC
Wow.
Wednesday at 4:00 that would air Thursday night.
Oh my God. Stress.
It was very stressful.
Wow.
It's now you're thinking, oh, well, that doesn't seem so bad. But back then it was all film,
Yeah.
cut film for, cut negative for air.
Wow.
We shot things on Monday morning that aired Thursday night on film. That was a little crazy.
That's
I literally
impressive.
moved from Hollywood to Burbank
Mm-hmm.
to just be closer to
Wow.
work
Mm-hmm.
because it was those 14, 16-hour,
Those
middle
long
of the
days.
night
Mm-hmm.
kind of days.
Wow.
It was incredible.
That's wild.
But, and I always get to say this, is that on the shows that I've done,
Yeah.
everybody in Hollywood works this hard. It's
Right.
not indicative of a successful show.
Mm-hmm.
It's just all the
that's,
shows.
That's what it is. Yeah.
I've been blessed that after working that hard,
Mm-hmm.
you get to see people really
Mm-hmm.
react to the show.
Yeah.
That makes all the difference in the world.
Such a good feeling, I feel
Yeah.
like, right? How is ER different from the hospital shows that we see today, like Grey's Anatomy or The Good Doctor?
We set out, for a long time at the beginning of ER, every story was true.
Oh, cool.
They were all stories that
Mm-hmm.
came from, we had physicians on the writing staff and
Mm-hmm.
physicians as consultants, and almost every story was absolutely true. And we were decidedly trying not to be a soap opera. That's
Yeah.
why the fast pace, you
Yeah.
never know who comes in, you never know what's
Mhm.
going to come through the door,
Mm-hmm.
or when the main story. I was just telling somebody the other day, one of the best episodes of ER was an episode called Love's Labor Lost,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is the one episode that has won more Emmys than any other thing, and that episode won
Right.
Emmys.
Yeah.
And the trick to that to that episode was that main story
Mm-hmm.
that people still talk about today didn't start until Act 2.
Oh.
So it wasn't the first people in the door. It wasn't the first thing we was talking. It was just like, a couple came in and she's going into early labor. And you put them in a room and you kind of forget about them. Well, that builds into this horrific storyline. And it was written by a doctor named Lance Gentile, and he set out to write what he said was his, what would the worst nightmare be if he was on call at night and he was kind of the charge in doctor, what would be the worst thing that could happen?
Wow.
And
That's
we
deep.
wrote that, or he wrote that, and Mimi Leader directed it, and it was extraordinary.
Wow.
It's really, if you
Yeah.
haven't seen that,
I know. I want to go watch that episode.
go back and watch it. And
That sounds super interesting.
Be prepared, though. It's
I'm ready.
gut-wrenching.
Yeah. I do love when shows or movies really bring out those emotions, though. I've been seeing a lot of movies lately where I don't feel that. Like, I just don't really think of it after when I leave the theater or when I stop watching it, and I don't want that.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but I think we've become a little numb to it sometimes.
That's true. We're a little spoiled too with all the easy access.
But if you go back to 1995, 94 or whatever, people weren't doing shows like that. The
Right.
hospital shows were,
Right.
we weren't
Yeah.
long off of Marcus Welby and stuff.
Yeah.
There was no show showing how
That was the
really
first one.
harsh
Mm-hmm.
and really graphic and, and painful some of these stories could be.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so after ER, you moved to West Wing. How was that whole experience, and how long after was that?
I did 4 years, the first 4 years of ER, and
Yeah.
then left to do another project with John that only went a few episodes or something. And then we had two shows picked up. One was called Third Watch, which was about New York City firefighters and cops, and which ran 5 years and was an excellent, excellent show. And this other show that Aaron Sorkin had pitched to John that said, and these are all known stories. You know, he wrote a movie called The American President, and he wrote like an 800-page script for that.
Wow.
Obviously, they only shot like 200 pages, but the rest of it was about all of the hardworking people in the White House that do the heavy lifting and legislation and stuff. The show was never meant to be specifically about the president of the United States.
Oh, okay.
He was only going to be in a couple of episodes throughout the season. It was going to be about all the people behind. Of course, in the casting process, you end up with, you know, Martin Sheen as the president, and you're like, I want to see more.
Yeah.
You know, that was pretty great.
That's pretty awesome.
He's only in one scene in the pilot.
Yeah.
But packed a punch. And let me also say that at that point, I was running post-production on West Wing and Third Watch at the same time. So I did 44 episodes of television and
what was your day like? I feel like
I still have a lump from the tumor that they cut out of my forehead here. Not a joke, by the way. They literally cut something out of from stress.
And you're okay now.
Oh yeah, no, it's fine. It was just like this stress ball thing.
So how do you deal with your stress now? Because I mean, the film.
Now is
totally
my life is a dream compared to that. 44. I work on shows now that do 10 episodes in a year.
Right, it's
44 episodes in 10 months.
Why do you think they cut it down so much? Like
streaming.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, way back when, look, there's 52 weeks in a year. They wanted 26 episodes.
Yeah.
So they could air them and rerun them. That's how television started.
Right.
Then it got down to like 22 because you didn't put one on at Christmas or Thanksgiving
or
the
holidays.
Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So then you cut down, and then it started getting lesser and less, and then streaming has just changed the market all.
It literally
together.
cut it in half. It went from like 22 episodes to like 12 or
there
10
are shows
or
that are
even...
doing 6 and 8.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
And they feel like they can put more money into the 6 and 8 and make a big splash, and people watch it. And
I don't know what I prefer. I still think about it.
Yeah, I mean,
think about it a lot.
That's a bigger conversation. But the idea that you can make a show and not have 5 commercial breaks in it.
That's fair.
I mean, if you really think about a network hour right now, it's 42 minutes chopped up into 6 acts.
Yeah.
So what kind of storytelling can you do in 6-minute acts?
Right.
You know, as opposed to a Shameless where we were pushing right up against 58 minutes every week.
It's true.
And there's a lot of story there.
A lot of story. Yeah. I kind of get into that later because I'm like, you've done both cable and streaming. Like, how has that changed? And what do you think the future will be with like all the streaming stuff?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I remember years and years and years ago, John did some press and asked him that, what's the future of television? and he didn't make, he'll say he didn't make the term up, but he specifically said it's not going to be broadcasting, it's going to be narrowcasting. There will be channels for everything you like. If you like sitcoms, if you like dramas, if you like sports, if you like, and this was long before
he's ahead of his time. Yeah,
it was. We were just thinking that it would be broadcast like that, but it couldn't be more true. You can subscribe to the puppy channel if you want and just watch puppies. Yeah, that's what we're at now. So it's just a matter of are there enough people in the world that want to dedicate themselves to watching puppies to make a stream that are going to pay that service.
Right. Oh my goodness. Were there any, when you worked on West Wing, you had multiple seasons also with like ER. Is it common to work with the same crew, or are you guys, switching out crew members as the seasons go on?
You try to build the best crew you can. Yeah. And that usually takes second season, maybe third season. And by then you've replaced, hopefully from that first season, you did really well, and 60% of that crew are keepers. Right. And, or it's just sometimes people aren't available. They go off to do other things or something like that. Right. But you try to keep honing, you do whatever you can to keep the people that are really great, and you keep adding to them. And then once you have them, you never let them go. Yeah, stay. You never. I mean, hopefully we're going to have a project going. Yeah. Very, very I'm waiting for the phone to ring.
Rings
And
right now.
I'm still
Cue the phone.
still desperately kind of quietly reaching out to the people that I want to work with saying,
Yeah.
you didn't take a job yet. Just let me know.
Yeah.
Call me before you do.
Yeah.
You know, because I want those people back.
Yeah. That's fair. When you work well with someone, like, why wouldn't you want to
Exactly
keep that?
right. And you find somebody who's talented and gets it and gets the way we do it and is either a lady or a gentleman. You know, those are the best recommendation I can give somebody is, wow, they're really, really talented. But more importantly, he's a gentleman. Or she, you know, she's going to take care of, you know, those people are the ones that you want that, you know, they're not only a team player, but they're looking out for the people that fall under their umbrella.
Right. Okay. I love all that. Let's jump to Shameless. Very popular show on Netflix, right? Is it on Netflix now?
It was on, Netflix and or iTunes. I don't know where
I saw
it
it on
is
Netflix.
now.
Yeah.
It has jumped a little bit.
So how long after West Wing was
By the way,
Shameless?
it aired on Showtime.
Oh, okay.
Everybody, a lot, like our audience jumped tremendously when it went on streaming. For the first few years, it was just on Showtime.
Oh my God, I didn't even know that.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
When we noticed it, we would be in Chicago filming on Showtime, and
what was the
15
difference?
people would come out and watch us shoot. Because, you know, went on streaming. We had to put there's 300 people out in the blazing sun. We had to put barriers up with the Chicago police to keep them away.
I believe that.
Much younger crowd, much more energetic fans.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was really amazing.
So what did a day on set look like?
I
feel like everybody would want to know. Like, what was a day on set like on the Shameless set?
It's organized chaos. We
love it. Tell us.
We shot so fast.
Like, how fast?
Well, it was not even a blink to shoot 8, 9, 10, 11 pages in a day.
How many camera setups do you have when you?
We've stopped counting setups because it's all handheld and you just keep shooting. But and by the way, that's like an 11, maybe a 12-hour day. We do not do 14, 16-hour days.
And how do you avoid not doing that? Because
I say no.
I have never worked on
Now, to be fair, Shameless.
I'm like, that sounds heavenly.
Shameless was a show that was kind of designed to be handheld. We weren't beauty lighting.
Okay.
We intentionally built the sets kind of small with hard ceilings.
Okay.
So that you can shoot everywhere and turn around. So, you know, although the lighting was very, very important, once you set the scene and the cinematographer would kind of light,
right?
You know, literally would be like, I'm lit for all this way. So you would shoot all of that, and then you'd like take a moment and turn around and light for this way. It wasn't every shot got its own lighting setup. Nobody was supposed to be beautiful. Nobody. I mean, they weren't. They were beautiful people on the show, but no one was getting touch-ups.
Yeah.
Last looks.
Right.
We outlawed last looks. There were no sides on set. You came in knowing your words.
Right. I've also never worked a set where the sides aren't present.
No sides.
So I'm very curious.
You can bring your whole script if you want.
Yeah.
The other cast members will probably make fun of you, but you can bring it. It was our goal to get a first shot in the first 30 minutes of the day.
And how often would that goal be completed?
Pretty often.
Really?
Yeah, because if we hadn't, because I stay, I open the company and I stay for the first shot. So people are motivated to get that first shot. And if you're going to shoot that much work, you can't light for the first 3 hours. It's never, your day is lost.
That is so true.
So everybody comes in at, if it's a 7 a.m. call, which we always strive for, rehearsal is at 7 a.m. Not, okay, let's knock on the trailer doors.
Right.
Everybody's there at 7 a.m. ready to rehearse so that we can show it to the crew 10 minutes later and shoot 10 minutes after that. And then that's how you make that kind
That's
of
how you run a set. I love that.
But everybody's got to be on board. And the actors have got to be on board. The crew's got to be on board. Everybody has to know. And I was very fortunate. I didn't do the pilot of Shameless. I had a medical thing. So I had to have surgery, prostate cancer, very young. So I missed the pilot.
Okay.
But the good news is the series was waiting for me when I recovered. And on that very first day, they shot the pilot in I don't know, 16 days or something.
Okay.
Mark Mila directed it. Who, by the way, I just watched the first episode of Succession for this season.
Great show.
What Mark is directing now. So it was great to see his name again. But John Wells directed the first episode when we came back, and he shot 11 pages in 10 hours.
Wow.
Yelled, cut, turned around and said, "That's how we're going to do this." And it was
I
the greatest gift as a producer. I was line producer at that point. That was the greatest gift I could have had. Is like, there's the guy who said this is how it wants it done, and he just did it. So that's what we're gonna do, and that sets the tone.
Nice. Well, like, what were some of the highlights on Shameless? Like, I know obviously that keeping it at 12 hours that's a highlight right there already.
We strove. My goal was to have a 7 a.m. call on Friday.
So no Fraturdays.
There was no Fraturdays.
Oh,
Matter of fact, I think we did 11 seasons in 10 years. I think we worked past midnight 10, 12 times.
Wow. Did you ever think you were going to do 11 seasons of Shameless?
No. I guessed 5 at the beginning.
Really?
For some reason, I thought it would be 5.
When you guys hit 5, or like the 5th season.
We were just hitting our stride.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Such...
Why did it end? Like, were you guys like, okay, it's been 11 seasons?
Oh, there's a lot of business reasons. Showtime, at that point, Showtime was paying 100% of the costs.
Okay.
They didn't own the show. Showtime doesn't mind paying 100% of the cost if they own it.
Right.
So, so it was a Warner Brothers show that was being sold to, to Showtime, but then Warner Brothers owned the international. It's just, it was a relic of the old deficit financing times.
What happened?
Plus, 11
11
years.
seasons. You're like, shit.
And believe me, there's always stories to tell, but at that point,
would you do it again?
Some of the kids on that show, we went from 9 to 19.
Oh, they grew up on the show.
They grew up had kids on the show.
Oh shit!
Yeah, Emma Kenny had a baby in episode, season 9 or something.
Wow, they really.
Yeah, it was amazing to watch them.
Would you do another season? Like if they were like, let's do a 12 season, like almost like when they
if somebody
Fuller
called
House,
in
but
a
like
year
Full
or
House?
two and said, "Hey, let's go back and do a season of Shameless," I'd be the first one in the door.
I love to hear that. Of course,
I mean it's just unfortunately, spoiler alert, at the end, Bill Macy's character succumbed to,
you should have already watched it by
COVID, but, he drinks a little.
Yeah.
So it would be really tough to do it without him.
Yes.
If you get the opportunity to meet or work with William H. Macy, run, do not walk to do it. He is a god among men and one of the best actors of his generation, or our generation.
I agree. Yeah. Okay, I want to talk about something more fun.
Yes, please.
Your Emmy Awards. First of all, not a lot of people can say I've won an Emmy. Not only just one, I think you've won 3 and you've been nominated for 5 or something.
Yeah, 5 or 6 or something. I think it's 6 because I always say I'm a 50% loser. No.
No. So I just wanted to ask, what was going through your mind when you first got your Emmy? Like, did you ever think that? Yeah,
it was insane. For a number of reasons.
Okay.
The Emmys are for the West Wing, and the first time I was nominated, the ceremony was in mid-September 2001.
Okay.
Like a week after 9/11. So it was canceled, and then it was postponed for, 5 or 6 weeks. And then we had a smaller, more, a quieter Emmy broadcast, which at the time was pretty significant. It was broadcast worldwide. It was hosted by Ellen DeGeneres. Fun fact, we won the Emmy that year for Best Drama, announced by and handed to us by Rudy Giuliani.
Wow. And did
America's
you all see
mayor.
that coming?
Well, he was there because, we were trying to showcase, this, by the way, was right before Barbra Streisand came out and sang. It was a really, really emotional night.
I can't even imagine.
I had planned for my parents to come with me. Obviously, with 9/11, they weren't getting anywhere near an airplane.
Yes.
So it was really spectacular to have won that. I did also win the next year, and the graces of John Wells, my parents got to sit next to me in the third row at the Emmys when I won an Emmy Award.
What did that feel like?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was super cool. I think they were probably more excited to meet Ray Romano because they were big fans of everybody, but it was cool to have them there. It was a pretty spectacular thing to watch.
Yeah.
My parents, who are, the best souls in the world, but we're from Braddock, Pennsylvania.
Must have been such a proud moment, though.
And I think they were pretty proud. It was pretty cool.
So you've had a lot of shows that have had multiple seasons, and there's a lot of shows that don't even make it past the first season. So why do you think that your shows have been so successful with multiple seasons?
Have we mentioned John Wells? Look, I think the shows that we have done never cater to the lowest common denominator.
I like that.
They are written specifically for people who are actually, we used to say we want to make television that people kind of sit up in their couch and kind of lean forward to pay attention to it. We're not doing fluff,
right?
Right. And we started that. Obviously China Beach was, I wasn't at the beginning of China Beach, but it was very emotional. It was talking about Vietnam in a very serious way.
Yeah.
ER was, something different altogether. I mean, it literally was, you never knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And people died. And we showed that horror. It wasn't, strings and, and, it was percussion and you saw the impact that had on the people that were working there.
Yeah.
And, look, The West Wing, Aaron Sorkin's writing is second to none.
Right.
It just is. It's
fabulous writing.
I've worked with two people that I consider geniuses. It's Aaron and Steven Soderbergh, and I just think their brains work a little faster and a little more efficient than the rest of ours. Because
That's
fair. One of the great gifts of my career was sitting next to Aaron Sorkin on the dub stage every week as we watched playback for The West Wing, and he would tap his thumb on the desk as he heard dialogue as rhythm, as music. And he could tell if it was like this, the cutting pattern was right. Wow. It was spectacular.
Yeah, that is. Was there ever a moment where you maybe questioned being a producer, or like was there ever a point in your life where this, I don't know if you're hitting a roadblock, or it just seemed like life was just throwing obstacles in the way and you just questioned your job?
Absolutely. There have been, especially when a show runs, you do 11 seasons of Shameless, there was time in the middle there where, the cast is kind of tired of each other and you're kind of tired of the cast and you feel like the stories aren't quite clicking and I wouldn't say it becomes a trudge, but it definitely was. There were moments that were less fulfilling creatively. What I do is I basically manage the production. Right. I am not a writer. Yeah. I wish I could write. Oh my God, the writers get the best toys. I'm not a writer. I don't have that gift. So basically what happens is John or Aaron or anybody on these shows would write these amazing scripts and then turn them over to us. Yeah. And us being me and the entire production. Right. To make into a television show. That's
a very big role, though.
It's a very
I feel like
big
you're
role.
downplaying yourself a little bit.
It's getting directors, it's prepping directors,
Yes.
it's finding the locations, it's overseeing production every day. I normally have 5 binders, one for each. I have 5 episodes working on my desk at all times. And then because I started in post-production and I'm, a weasel, I never want to give anything up. I still, even on Shameless to the end, I did the first producer's cut. The director would finish the show, give it to me. I would go through and do my edit to kind of shape it into a Shameless, hopefully getting, if I'm lucky, 75% of the way there before I show it to John. Okay. And then John would come in and make the magic. You know, I always say I was a good rough carpenter, and he would come in and do the fine finish work.
I love your references. They're so funny.
Well, it is. We also,
it's great teamwork that you guys work so well.
I always say I'm good at what I do because I understand how television is built.
Yeah,
it's a production line, and because of editing and cutting things together and stuff like that, I know that we need this piece and we need that piece.
Yeah,
we don't need all these pieces. So let's do this and this.
Yeah,
we don't need that. Let's not do that. Let's come in, work hard, and go home.
Yes, put that on a shirt.
It might be. Yeah.
So how did you balance, or how do you balance your social life, your family life with your work life? Because you mentioned it yourself. Like you put in long hours, and I mean now it's more like 10 to 12 hours, but it's still a long time. Like the average workday is like 8 hours for.
Yeah, no, God, I don't work things sometimes. It's like people work from like 9 to 5. Well, at 5 o'clock, what would I do if I went home?
Actually, funny story. I told my mom once I got off early. She's like, "Oh, really? Like how early?" And I was like, "Like 8 hours." She's like, "That's a regular work day." And I was
Yeah.
But
no.
versus 12 hours or 14.
Social life, I got very, very lucky in that in the middle of the West Wing, I fell in love with a writer on the show, Lauren Schmidt-Hissrich, if you're out there. She started as an intern.
Okay.
The first season of the West Wing.
Okay.
Left as a writer-producer. So
wow.
I used to think I was, but she actually is the luckiest person in Hollywood because she... And she learned to write from Aaron Sorkin and learned to produce from John Wells. And she's super, super duper successful. But working together and being together was really great. And then once the West Wing ended, she went and did her shows and I did my shows, which allowed us to have our own lives, but then come back every night and talk about that. Yeah. And if one of us wasn't working, we never lived outside of our means. So we could always live on one of our salaries, which allowed her then to develop pilots or me to take some time off after a tough production or something. That worked out. That worked out well. We have our marriage ended a couple of years ago. So I'll let you know how the social life goes now. I don't know.
How does the balancing your career now work with, now that you guys aren't together?
We have a spectacular nanny.
Yeah.
And
shout out nannies. I used to be a nanny.
And I have two beautiful children who are 10 and 12.
Yes.
Do
you think they want to be in the film industry at all?
Yeah, I think we're starting to see the my older son is 12 and he's already animating things and shooting things with his iPad and editing things and
that is awesome.
I can see the wheels turning.
Yeah.
And then my younger son, we call him our talk show host because he's going to tell you what to do. You're going to have a good time. You'll enjoy it. But you're going to do what he tells you to do. And he's just such an amazing personality in this tiny little body. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's out in front of the camera at some point.
I love that. Boy, he has a great mentor. What are some things that you've seen change in the industry from when you first started out to now?
Well, the obvious things is, electronic warfare, as we call it, the streaming and the shooting things with your iPhone. And I mean, that's just the technology is such that you can put a camera anywhere and do it. We're not carrying around Panavision 35 millimeter cameras anymore.
That's true.
Things are smaller. Things are faster.
Things are smaller.
You can shoot as much as you want. You're not worried about per foot. We have two cameras up all the time, and sometimes somebody will say, well, let's not use that camera, we'll just use one camera. It's like, why? The guy's sitting there. Shoot something. You never know, it could end up being a good piece. And with film before, you would say no, save that film. So that's probably the biggest thing. And of course, streaming, the idea that they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on 6 or 8 episode shows. It's just insanity.
Where does the budget go? Where do they
travel? If you look at Game of Thrones or any of the these massive fantasy shows, my wife's show, The Witcher, is one of them. Which money
did great also.
It is absolutely, and the money is in traveling the world, visual effects, epic scenes, epic battles. That is, at least with those shows, you can see it on screen. There are some other shows out there that I won't name that are very, very expensive, and you go,
why?
Huh. Why is that? Why did it take them 22 days to shoot that episode of people talking? That seems weird.
Yeah.
But God bless. That's
how much of a budget? Like, what's the ideal budget for, let's say, a TV show of, let's do 12 episodes? Like, what would the ideal budget be for that?
Look, for a while, budgets were, when we finished when we finished Shameless, we were $6.5 million an episode, which is a 10th season show. I mean, we started much, much later than that, but people get raises and cash gets expensive and things like that. But even at that, there are first year series now that cost more than that. The money that people are putting into, it's insanity. I think now with the post-COVID and with the economy, I think we're going to see studios we are seeing studios clamp down on but they want to get back in. Let's do an hour show for $6 million, $7 million, $8 million, not 10, 11, 12 million.
It's more impressive too to do it with like less smaller budget.
It depends on what it is. It depends what people want to do. I just don't have. I don't want to go out and shoot Fast and Furious. I don't.
That's not your type of.
Right. I don't have. I no longer in my life feel the need to blow shit up.
Right.
I just don't. I'd rather have great writing, great actors, and some great photography, and tell a great story. There's some of the best shows in the last 5 years have been the smallest, the Normal People and Fleabag, and maybe hopefully a little bit of Shameless, and shows that are telling stories about life and not about dragons and talking cars and things.
So what would you say are some key elements to be a successful producer?
Everybody's different. I always say that my background in post has been my greatest asset because I understand I can be on set making a decision with the director and the actors about how we're going to do something, because I know what's going to end up in the show downstream. Right. I know what I'm going to leave in the cut, and I kind of know what John's going to leave in the cut. So I can say, guys, that big crane shot that you're planning to do in the living room.
It's not even going to make it in there.
It's like, that's never going to be in the show. So let's not even, don't even take it off the truck.
Right.
Not going to happen.
Right.
So I think that's probably one of my biggest strengths. A pretty good business acumen. I grew up watching my father run a small business for 20 years. Right. And I always say, I have a cool degree from Carnegie Mellon, but what I learned working for my dad, and then the other thing was I grew up in a volunteer fire department family. I was a captain on a fire engine the whole time I went through school and stuff. And I think safe, smart decision making, quick decision making. Right. I think those also, it's like, let's quickly weigh all the possibilities here and choose a direction, much like you would have to do when you jumped off a fire truck in front of a building.
Pressure.
If you're on set and something goes wrong, let's decide how to fix it right here, right now, and then actually do it and not debate it for a long time. Right.
Is there anything you would change in your career path? It's okay if there's not. I'm just curious.
Career path, I would be an idiot to say that it could have gone better. Yeah. I mean, I can't point to anything that I turned down and I would have wanted to do. I've worked with just extraordinarily talented people. Yeah. Both very, very famous and not famous at all. And they're both equally, those two groups are equally important to who I am. We always say, nothing is too precious. It doesn't, I mean, if you're spending 4 hours pushing in on a doorknob and it's like, well, what is this show? Doorknob. Is the show about a doorknob? What are we doing?
Maybe it is. I'm just kidding.
It will, sure. If you're on
the
doorknob channel, if you're a subscriber, you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Priscilla is subscribing.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah, that's fair though. I totally get it. If there's anything you could tell your younger self, what would it be?
My younger self? That it's all going to work out. That all those all those times where I come home and I say, "Oh my God, I'm going to get fired tomorrow because this happened," or I can't believe I let that happen, or I'm paralyzed with fear going in to start a job because of imposter syndrome or something. I think I would go back and tell that person, I've seen how it ends, and so far so good. It is a little bit like riding a wave. You don't know what's going to happen, but
there's no clear path either how to get into the industry. So I think that's what's so scary.
Especially nobody moves to California to be a producer. Nobody. I mean, it just isn't one of those jobs that they talk about when you're aspiring anything.
Right.
So everybody comes here looking to do something different. Most come looking to be an actor, a director, or a writer.
Right.
Very few are successful at any of those.
Yeah.
But if you come out here and you get that job and you start to learn about, I really like post-production. Who knew? I didn't know there was somebody who ran. Like,
I didn't
you could
know
be
that
an editor.
So many roles. Yeah.
You could be a mixer or something. But the person who oversaw all of that, I didn't know that was a job.
Right.
And one of my, after being a PA, I worked for John as his assistant.
Yeah.
And he, one day said, you have to learn a skill. I can keep you working.
Yeah.
Forever if you learn a skill. You cannot be my assistant, for a long time. And I say this to my assistants all the time, So I went and I got into post-production and learned about post. And that kept me going for the next 10 years until I came back into production and started running a show. So I always tell people who want to be my assistant, it's like, come work with me. Yeah. Figure out what you want to do because I understand no one grew up wanting to be Mike Hissrich's assistant. That was never on anybody's, never, career day. Nobody said, you know what I want. But if you come and work with me and help me do this thing, I promise to teach you everything I can. And that when it's time, when you've maxed out on what I can teach you, I will help you get whatever that job is that you want.
Yeah.
And it's been, I've had such amazing people work for me and with me. Almost every one of them is still a dear close friend of mine, and they're all successful, and it's really great to see.
That's really great to hear too, because you don't hear that often either. That somebody wants to take that extra step to help you with your career and help you advance. So it's really nice to hear that, and it's very refreshing. Do you think
But by the way, if you are out here and you are working and you're someone's assistant, that's what it should be.
Yeah.
But
it's not always like that.
I know, but I always tell people, it's like, I don't. You are my assistant on the show. You're not picking up my dry cleaning. Right. You're not. There are some things that I may say, hey, could you do this or you could do that, just because I can't. Yeah. But you're never like walking my dog or cleaning the cat box that's not that job.
Yeah. Which I've heard people like.
Oh, that was big.
Someone that I know, they're like, yeah, I was a personal assistant, and then I would have to like.
Well, if you get hired as a personal assistant,
well,
outside of the show, if a studio is paying you, you shouldn't be picking up dog shit. Yeah. No, that's not a thing.
But how would you set your boundaries with that? Because I feel like someone that's starting out, you wouldn't necessarily want to be like, hey, like, I'm not doing that. Like, it's hard. Like, you're like,
there's a lot of mileage to be got out of, well, you got to pay your dues.
Right.
Yeah, you got to pay. You know why you're paying your dues? Because you're making $800 a week and you're working, 14-hour days. Yeah. That's paying your dues.
Yeah.
You don't then on top of that have to like go and make sure I have my breakfast burrito at the house before the van picks me up. Stop. It's like being an adult.
Right. Do you think that your success came from taking risks, or majority from taking big risks? Because you moved from New York to LA, then you took a job that paid less when you could have been making more. Like, do you think?
I don't want to paint myself a hero here. I was very, very, very lucky. Like I said.
But it's okay to be lucky.
If I had big school loan payments or car payments, I would have never been able to move from New York and take that. I was making in 1989, I was making like $1,200 a week as working on Broadway, which was phenomenal. Right out of school, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And then I came out here and I made $350. I wouldn't have been able to do that if I had that debt load.
Yeah.
So risk, not, was
like,
it a risk?
Film
not
school.
really.
Giving me that debt.
Yeah, I can't really say that oh boy, I took that chance. I got in with a great group of people who were already very successful, and they let me hang around, and I got to prove myself.
Yeah.
So, it's I won't paint myself a hero there.
My last question for you is, where do you see yourself in the next 10 years?
Asleep. I always say, and I always joke with John, that I got one more good. Let's do one more show for 10 years. I would love that.
Yeah.
And, I got
quick little 10 seasons.
another 10 years in me, and then I could maybe take it easy.
Yeah.
I had kids when I was older, so I have young kids, and they keep me. I'm still wrestling on the couch every night.
I love that.
And running around. You met them; they're insane, and
yes, they're so cute.
But in the most wonderful way.
Yeah.
So because my ex-wife, their mom, works predominantly in the UK.
Okay.
I will only work here in LA.
Okay.
Which really narrows down the job possibilities, but that's fine. Yeah. I'm so happy to, like I said, come in, do hard work, and go home.
Yeah.
As we're starting a show, I tell everybody, look, I have kids. Yeah. I really like them.
Yeah.
I want to work hard and go home. It's why everybody's
that.
like, oh, it's so nice that you start at 7 a.m.
It's so nice that you love your kids.
They're like, oh, it's so nice that you want to start at 7 a.m. and get us home for a weekend. It's like, oh yeah, it's all about you.
Yeah.
It's because I want to get you home for the weekend. No, it's all about getting Mike home for dinner with the kids.
No, that's huge. Being home for, it might seem like a small thing, like, oh, it's just dinner, I'm not going to be around, but kids remember that. So it is really nice that you take that extra step and that effort to be there for meals and practices.
But you also then have to apply that to everybody else. It's like, look, if you come work for me and you need to go to the doctor, go to the doctor.
Yeah.
Or something's up, I gotta, my mom's sick or something. Like, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
As long as you go in and you prove yourself that when you're here, you're working hard and you're participating, you're not sloughing off, then it's so much easier for somebody to say, hey, if you need to take some time, take some time. We'll be okay.
Yeah.
And if somebody comes to me and said my kid's sick, it's like, all right, then we'll figure that out. That's
we're human at the end of the day too.
Right. We can't work this hard and this long.
Right.
And expect everybody to have all their appointments on Saturday afternoons, because it's just, that can't happen.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing everything that you shared and taking us through the journey. I had such a good time talking to you, and I think people will love to hear this insight and, get real professional advice too. So it's been awesome.
Happy to do it. Congratulations on 100 of these. That's spectacular.
Thank you. Yes.
And hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Yeah, I hope so too. You're welcome back anytime, and I'm so excited to see what you do next, because I know it will be something big.
When we do,
excited to sit and watch.
when the next thing happens, we'll talk about that.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.